Standard habit formation advice assumes neurotypical executive function. When you have ADHD, following conventional wisdom about building routines often leads to repeated failure, not because of lack of willpower, but because the underlying neural architecture operates differently. The strategies that work for most people depend on brain systems that function according to entirely different principles in ADHD. Hey there, neurospicy folks! I'm Dr. Monty, and I'm an ADHD psychologist with a special interest in all things neurodivergent neuroscience. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel to help me grow and bring more scientific understanding and awareness to a larger audience. Thanks so much! Conventional habit formation theory rests on three assumptions: that your brain can reliably remember behavioral intentions, maintain motivation through moderate rewards, and convert repetition into automaticity. For neurotypical brains, these assumptions generally hold. Ann Graybiel's research at MIT has shown how the basal ganglia, working with the prefrontal cortex, gradually automate repeated behaviors by strengthening neural pathways between environmental cues and motor responses. This neuroplasticity process underlies every productivity system's core advice. Link a behavior to a consistent cue, repeat the sequence regularly, and wait for automaticity to develop. Philippa Lally's 2010 study at University College London found this process takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days, with an average of 66 days for simple behaviors like drinking water after breakfast. The formula appears straightforward. Consistency plus time equals behavioral automation. But this model assumes executive function systems operate within neurotypical parameters. ADHD fundamentally alters the neural networks that standard habit formation depends on. Working memory, sustained attention, dopamine regulation, and behavioral inhibition all function differently. Russell Barkley's research has demonstrated that ADHD represents a developmental delay in executive function systems, not simply an attention problem. When you attempt to build habits using neurotypical strategies, you're applying the wrong framework to your particular neurology. The result isn't moral failure, it's a predictable mismatch between method and brain architecture. Habit formation requires three neurological processes to function reliably. Working memory must maintain behavioral intentions while you execute other tasks. The dopamine system must provide sufficient reward prediction to sustain motivation through repetition. And the basal ganglia must successfully convert conscious sequences into automatic motor programs. Research by Martinson and Tannock has shown that working memory efficiency in ADHD operates significantly below neurotypical levels. This creates a specific problem for habit formation. You can genuinely intend to meditate after brushing your teeth, but your working memory may fail to maintain that intention during the toothbrushing task itself. The behavioral goal drops out of active awareness, not through forgetfulness in the usual sense, but through working memory's inability to juggle multiple cognitive demands simultaneously. Dopamine regulation creates even more fundamental challenges. Wolfram Schultz's research revealed that dopamine neurons fire not just when receiving rewards, but crucially when predicting them. This anticipatory signal drives behavioral repetition by making actions feel worth doing before you complete them. But Nora Volkow's neuroimaging studies have documented altered dopamine functioning in ADHD, including different reward sensitivity patterns and motivation circuits. This creates what researchers term the dopamine paradox in ADHD habit formation. Novel behaviors initially trigger dopamine release simply because they're new. But as novelty fades, the moderate intrinsic rewards that sustain neurotypical habits become insufficient to maintain ADHD motivation. The brain's reward system stops registering the behavior as worthwhile, even when you intellectually understand its benefits. Behavioral automation fails for different reasons. The basal ganglia converts repeated sequences into chunks, larger behavioral units requiring less conscious oversight. But this process depends on consistent environmental cues and stable internal states. Research by Michelle Mowry at the University of Pittsburgh in the mid-2010s has shown that ADHD brains demonstrate greater day-to-day variability in attention, mood, and executive function than neurotypical brains. Practically, this means you might successfully link meditation to toothbrushing for 2 weeks, then encounter 3 stressful days where your internal state differs so dramatically that the cue-behavior connection fails to activate. For neurotypical brains, such interruptions represent temporary setbacks. For ADHD brains, they often require rebuilding the entire behavioral sequence from the beginning. The research landscape reveals additional complexity around ADHD habit formation. Clinical studies by Stephen Safran and others have demonstrated that ADHD brains can develop automatic behaviors, but require what researchers call external scaffolding, systems that compensate for internal executive function differences. This doesn't mean permanent dependence on external rewards, but rather extended support during the formation phase. While neurotypical brains might automate a behavior in 66 days, research suggests ADHD populations often need 3 to 6 months of conscious practice before experiencing genuine automaticity. Studies from the 2000s have also challenged the rigid consistency model. Research by Jakicic and Wing at the University of Pittsburgh found that ADHD adults showed greater success with exercise habits when allowed flexible implementation, different activities on different days, rather than identical routines. This suggests ADHD habit formation may work better through what researchers term flexible consistency, maintaining behavioral categories while allowing specific expressions to vary. The replication crisis has affected habit research broadly. The widely cited 21 days to form a habit concept lacks empirical support, and Lally's more rigorous research shows dramatic individual variation. ADHD populations consistently require longer timeframes, though the specific mechanisms behind this difference remain under investigation. Comorbidity research adds further complexity. Studies by Kessler and others show that ADHD rarely occurs in isolation. ADHD plus anxiety creates different habit formation challenges than ADHD plus depression. Anxiety can make behavioral uncertainty feel threatening, while depression can make the required effort feel overwhelming. The interaction effects suggest that one-size-fits-all approaches ignore crucial individual differences. Emerging neuroscience also distinguishes between habit types. Research by Kyle Smith at Dartmouth College in the 2010s differentiates motor habits, like toothbrushing, from cognitive habits, like calendar checking. ADHD appears to affect these categories differently, with motor habits being somewhat more accessible than cognitive ones, though the underlying mechanisms require further study. If you have ADHD and standard habit advice has repeatedly failed, the solution isn't trying harder. It's using different strategies designed for your neurological reality. Abandon neurotypical timelines. Where standard advice suggests weeks, plan for months. Where it demands rigid consistency, design flexible systems instead. Compensate for working memory limitations through environmental design. Instead of relying on remembering to take vitamins, place them beside your coffee maker. Instead of remembering to exercise, prepare workout clothes the night before. These aren't crutches, they're engineering solutions for predictable cognitive bottlenecks. Address dopamine regulation differences by building immediate rewards into the formation phase. Listen to favorite podcasts only during walks. Reserve special coffee for post-routine completion. This external scaffolding compensates for your brain's different motivation patterns while behavioral pathways develop. Design flexibility into your systems from the start. Instead of meditate for 10 minutes at 7 a.m. daily, try complete mindfulness practice during morning routine. The core behavioral intention remains consistent, while specific implementation adapts to daily reality. Reframe success metrics entirely. Neurotypical advice emphasizes streaks, consecutive days of behavioral completion. For ADHD brains, this creates unnecessary shame when life inevitably interrupts consistency. Focus on frequency over time instead. Meditating 20 days out of 30 represents massive success, not failure due to broken streaks. Work with your brain's novelty requirements rather than against them. Rotate between exercise types. Modify routines every few months. This isn't inconsistency. It's sustainable adaptation to how your brain actually operates. Understand that ADHD habit formation often follows wave patterns rather than linear progression. Periods of effortless routine maintenance alternate with phases where everything feels difficult. This reflects the natural rhythm of ADHD executive function, dealing with changing stress, demands, and circumstances, not moral inadequacy. When someone suggests you just build better habits, you now understand why that advice fundamentally misses the target. ADHD brains absolutely can develop sustainable routines and behaviors, but they require strategies designed for executive function differences, dopamine regulation variations, and variable internal states. The approach involves designing systems that accommodate rather than override these neurological differences. When you stop fighting your brain architecture and start engineering around it, what appeared to be a discipline problem reveals itself as a solvable design challenge.